Salutations, listeners.
Si Valis Valeo.
Valer Magulus.
Nanu Nanu. Thank you for tuning in. This is Three Men in a Basement, and we are the Ultra Crepidarians.
Bingo.
Yahtzee?
Ultra Crepidarians, bingo?
Bingo.
One of the words. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?
What do we do? Well, first, we introduce ourselves.
Okay.
My name is Colin McLeod.
Mark Culp here.
Action Jackson.
We went through that quick. That was a quick introduction. In this podcast, we review movies, and we deliver to you, the listener, an average schmuck's opinion about hidden gems in the wide world of cinema. In this show, we try and target movies that are not super duper popular, total blockbuster smashes. They smash no blocks.
Nope.
We try and target movies that are not really, really obscure, ones that you couldn't get your hands on a copy, even if that was your intention. Instead, we aim for that delightful sweet spot of movies, right in the middle. Ones that maybe you've seen, maybe you've heard about, maybe you saw it back in 1981, and you want to know if it's worth shaving your hair down into a mullet and popping it in the old 8-track and blasting it at full volume in your Trans Am while you rev the engine.
Ride hard, Sebastian. Ride hard. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm talking
I'll go with that.
Yep.
We review these movies, and we deliver to you our opinion about whether you need to hunt them down and pop them in the old 8-track in the Trans Am.
Heck yeah.
Sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. You know, that's the mystery.
Yeah.
Right.
The Mystery Science Theater 3000.
And that's why we do the work to take the mystery out of it for you.
Yeah, because who likes mystery?
No.
Angela Lansbury? Bitch.
Write a book. What a nerd.
Sorry, the what a nerd got me. Okay, in this, our 49th episode of the podcast, we reviewed the movie
Imperium.
Woof.
Woof. That's a double woof on that.
Yeah.
Okay, Imperium. What do we got? 2016 movie, rated R. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Thoughts? Is it rated R?
Yeah.
I think for profanity, maybe some violence, but like the content is
Holy shit.
Yeah.
really, really heavy.
1 hour and 49 minutes. I don't feel like that. This movie is extremely intense. That's why we're woofing at it. And I think it goes along a lot faster because you're so sucked into the intensity. It is not the kind of movie where you're sitting there going like, when will they get to the next scene? It is not that movie.
No, and the scenes that pull a little long because of
Intensity.
intense and like intentional silences and glances, and it kind of sucks all the air out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not have wanted this movie to be longer. It was enjoyable in that it was thought-provoking and it was shot in a very entertaining way, but like I wouldn't have wanted to marinate in the subject matter any longer than we had to.
Yeah, any longer and it probably would have been exhausting. Any shorter and I don't feel like they could have covered what they covered, you know,
Right.
as well as they did. We need to do cherries on this. Cherries?
Papa.
Pop.
Wow, 2 cherries. Not for me. This movie I have seen probably about 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah, it is one of those. We'll explain the intensity that we're talking about, even pre-spoilers. We'll explain that intensity, but I'm going to show my hand here a little bit. Like, the movies that you really enjoy or the movies that you come back to, you can't watch all the time, right? Like, my absolute favorite movies, I'm not saying this is one of my absolute favorites, but, you know, my absolute favorite movies of all time, I mean, I've really only seen them maybe each, like, half a dozen times or something like that, because, like, usually they're my favorite movie because they are so... I get so emotionally invested in them, and they are so intense for me that, like, watching them every week would, A, water down that effect, which would fucking suck, and B, it would exhaust me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this has an element of that. I just watched The Whale.
Ooh.
A while ago. It was a couple months ago, but,
Is that
Brendan Fraser.
Yeah,
Yeah, that movie, like, immediately jumped to the very tippy top of my list. I think that movie is probably top 3 favorite movies for me of all time. But I literally, like, walked out of that movie and I was like, somebody ring me out like a fucking ShamWow. Like, I was blown out. This movie has a similar ilk.
Yeah, one of my favorites is Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, again, that's another hard movie to watch.
Zihuatanejo.
Yeah. And it's such a great movie. It's so wonderfully created. There are funny moments. There are heartwarming moments. There are scary moments. But it's one of those that, like, the subject matter is just heavy and dark enough that if you saturate yourself with it, it's both going to affect you, and the effect of the movie is going to be lessened over time.
Yeah, my connection is like the movie Requiem for a Dream.
Oh, God.
Wow.
I feel
Oh,
like,
God.
Well, I know, but I feel like it is a masterpiece
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
that I honestly don't really want to ever watch again. Like, I will watch it again, but like you're right. I can't put myself through that
On
But
a
it's
regular
amazing.
basis. Like, no.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Please remind me of that pre-spoilers, but maybe around the time we're doing Rex. Remind me of Requiem for a Dream, because I got something to do. But we should jump into what the fuck this movie is about. Is there a guy who can help us out?
I think there's at least one, yeah.
Yeah.
Billy D. Williams. Or Reed.
Yeah.
Description.
D script, baby. I don't know. It's a heavy movie, so
We should probably throw out one of those disclaimers, like, you know, what we did for, like, Green Room and Jacob the Liar and shit. Is like, we're going to be making jokes through this whole fucking thing. We're not making light of the content. Right. We're making jokes because you guys came here for dick and fart jokes, not to listen to us, like...
flapping our labias, you know?
Flapping our labias.
God.
You know, if I had a nickel for every time I did that, I wouldn't have any money.
Right. So, a young FBI agent, eager to prove himself in the field, goes undercover as a white supremacist.
That's just a clue as to the heavy content that we were referring to.
Yep.
Yeah, it really, like, it's good in the broad stroke sense, and I'm not going to add anything to it, but it is absolutely, like, there's so much more.
That, like, sets the stage without revealing much of anything.
Yep.
Okay, let's do Genrys.
Yeah.
What Genrys are these?
First off, well, biography. Is this based upon?
Okay, so I have seen this movie, like I said, like 5 or 6 times. When we turned this movie on, the very first thing that popped up was inspired by true events. I don't think it's like based on a true story type thing. I don't think it's like follows a specific person. I think it like holistically follows all FBI agents that have ever infiltrated white supremacist organizations.
Yeah, I mean, because you've got 2 categories in this. You've got based on a true story and then inspired by true events. Inspired by true events means, hey, we took the plot of something that actually happened and made a fictional movie out of it.
Yeah. They get so much leeway with that now.
I know.
It's fucking crazy. Like, you know, and I just feel like there's just like a horribly blurred line between like, I mean, there was no bridge in the Battle of Stirling Bridge in Braveheart. Let's just leave it at that.
Right.
Not knocking Braveheart. I fucking love Braveheart.
Are we sure about the bridge thing? I mean, I haven't been there personally.
That's true. He hasn't.
You know.
So, and since Mark's never been there, that means
it probably doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's science-ish.
That's solipsism, Mark.
Science adjacent.
Yes. But yeah, crime, drama.
Big time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Those are the 2 that resonate with me the most.
It's also got mystery and thriller. And I would say mystery is a funny tag, but the more I think about it, I kind of get it. We'll get into it a little bit more in spoilers, but like, I actually don't think that's a totally inappropriate tag, but it is like, it catches your eye. It's kind of like strange.
It threw me at first, like you said. I was like, is this a mystery? But there are enough elements that overlap that I would say it qualifies.
I would also say that like a lot of the mystery aspect is intrinsically tied with the thriller part. Like this movie, I would say top tag for me is a thriller.
Yes.
It is absolutely a thriller. And some of the thriller stuff is driven by you not knowing certain things, and it makes for a great intensity.
The last tag we have on here is war.
No.
I wouldn't.
I would not at all place a war tag on this.
If you told me this was a war movie and I watched it, I would be very concerned.
Yeah.
And disappointed, frankly.
Yeah, this isn't fucking Saving Private Ryan. Just because some of the people in the movie are under delusions that they're in some, like, race war or some shit like that does not make this a war movie.
The only
like,
reason...
a war movie has, you know, soldiers and sovereign nations, like, fighting each other like that. Yeah.
This is to tear it apart, we've got to go into spoilers.
Yep, you're right. But war, no. Not a chance. Okay, who do we got in this movie?
It's a bit of a magical cast, if you will, or at least the top bill is. He finds himself to be a wizard. That's Mr. Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
You know what? I make a joke about him being a wizard, you know, because that was how he came up. But Daniel Radcliffe has diversified his acting career so extensively, and like he jumps into so many like weird niche independent movies that
dude, Swiss Army Man.
He's not Harry Potter, but
No.
unfortunately, that is how I'm going to always view him, but he's so beyond that now.
That's literally how I lead off when I talk about this movie to people. Is it stars Daniel Radcliffe, and I love you so much, Daniel Radcliffe. Please do not take this personally, but you're definitely going to, because I'm talking about your abilities as a human. I don't think Daniel Radcliffe was perhaps the greatest choice for Harry Potter ever. I think his acting when he was younger was kind of weak. I think it got better as he got older, and I don't think it was helped at all in the Harry Potter movies, which I love. I don't think it was helped at all by the fact that he was surrounded by the greatest actors of the day. He's standing against Alan Rickman and Maggie Smith and Gary Oldman and shit. And then you've got Emma Watson and Rupert Grint, who I would say are objectively much better actors, or at least at the time when they were younger, better actors. All that being said, he developed quite a bit as an actor, and I think he found an absolutely outstanding niche. Like Mark said, following these movies, he kind of reinvented his career, and he ended up in all of these kind of bizarre movies that have a couple of through lines. They tend to be intense. They tend to be comical in sort of a hinky way in some regards, and they tend to be, I would say this is the least comical of these movies, but for a lot of reasons, but they also tend to be kind of offbeat, almost independent, but not quite. So he did Swiss Army Man, which we mentioned. He
Guns
did
Akimbo.
Guns Akimbo. I cannot believe how few people have seen that movie. He also did Horns.
Yeah.
Right? And then he did this movie, and all of them right under the fucking radar. Every one of his movies seemingly following the Harry Potter franchise are movies that are perfect for our podcast, but because they're the kind that you can go oh my God, you haven't seen this movie. You've got to see this movie.
Well, he recently did a movie with Jason Statham and Sandy B called The Lost City.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And then I recently watched him in this weird TV show about the employees of heaven called Miracle Workers. And without getting into spoiler territory, when the movie takes off, we see our lead cast in a car, and I just see his face, and I kind of under my breath, I was like, all right, Daniel fucking Radcliffe.
Yeah,
let's go.
You were so surprised. So for those of you out there in cyberspace, we have procedures that we undergo to bring you quality content. And one of the things that we're pretty strict about is if you've not seen this movie, don't look at the IMDb, don't look at the DVD cover, whatever. And so I got it away from them very quick, so everybody would be surprised.
Yeah, most of the
very
time,
pleased that Jackson had that reaction.
Most of the time, if I don't recognize the movie beforehand, I will just let it fade into obscurity to the point where we get here and I'm like, what are we watching again?
Sometimes it's a gem.
And half the time, it's just a video recording of me with my junk tuck back singing Goodbye Horses in a suit of human skin.
Still film.
Goodbye Horses.
Yeah, he's got the artificial labia harness.
That's it. The artificial labia harness.
Yeah.
I do not want to meet the inventor of that.
Is that a band name?
Artificial labia harness? Sure. Yeah, we could write that down. I'm going to write that down with my words. I learned in elementary school so I could learn how to spell artificial labia harness.
There you go.
I mean, it's better than
What is it better than, Mark? Tell me.
An organic labia harness? Or
That's worse.
Is it?
You're right. That is worse.
An organic, non-GMO, vegan labia harness.
We're making a big deal about this being artificial. I'm saying, what if it's, what if this is, it's from the earth?
That's true. It's better than an industrial labia harness, I suppose.
Like a plant-based
Yeah.
harness,
Plant-based I could get behind.
You don't want an aggressively over-engineered labia harness,
No.
right? You want it to be kind of a...
loose-fitting, if you will.
Yeah, right? Something that that our ancestors developed with, sticks and reeds.
Yeah.
Sticks and reeds.
Sticks and reeds.
Yeah.
Circling back to the movie with the people.
Yeah. Who else was in this?
We also in this movie have Toni Collette, and she is pretty awesome. She was in The Sixth Sense. She was in Hereditary. So was it Hereditary or was she in The Babadook? No, she was in Hereditary. She played the mom in Hereditary. She was in About a Boy.
Knives Out.
Yep.
She played Joni.
Yeah, she was Xena in Nightmare Alley.
Toni Collette, I feel like we say a lot oh, you know their face, but not their name. I think Toni Collette, a lot of people do know her name, but I also feel like a lot of people would maybe only know her by face. She's got a very distinctive face.
Yeah, she was largely unknown to me, but the more I saw her in the film, I had this nagging sense of familiarity.
Yeah. Yep.
That's so funny. She was in How to Lose Friends and Alienate People
Oh,
as Toni Collette, as herself.
that's great.
Okay, who else we got? Oh, sorry. One more thing. Toni Collette. That's where a lot of people know her from, or where I originally know her from. She's the mom in Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
Greg Kinnear's wife, the mother of the two kids.
Yep. Okay. We also have Nestor Carbonell. For me, most recognizably as the mayor in the Dark Knight franchise.
Yeah.
He just has a very like recognizable and like distinguished. I don't know if that's the right word, but like look good in a suit, you know?
Yeah.
He's a handsome man. Honestly, if I saw his face, I could not tell you what he's from. But I know his face. I mean, everybody knows his face.
She's mine.
I feel like, hypothetically, if you were to run out of, like, sandpaper during a woodworking project, you could probably just pretty comfortably grab that guy's ears and just kind of rub his chin on the unfinished wood.
Yep.
And I think it would smooth it out pretty well.
You don't want to damage the wood, though.
I know, that is the risk, right? You know, because he's got the
He's got
sort
that
of-
220 grit.
Yeah, he's got the 220 grit, and it's angular.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, if you would accidentally drop his head on the piece of wood, you'd probably dent it
Or get the
maybe break
angle
it.
wrong, you'd get some gouges in there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a finesse project.
Yep.
Let's just say.
Very utility, if you will. Yeah.
Okay, who else's chin do we have in this movie? Anybody else?
I mean, certainly. I don't know if anyone really merits unless you got somebody else.
Well, speaking of chins, Chris Sullivan, who...
I believe it's pronounced Sutherland.
Oh, that's right. That's
You're right. You're right.
Chris,
Yep.
Chris Sutherland.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
We forgot to mention, Mark is the local chapter president of the
Sullivan.
Keithers. I can't even fuck it up properly.
That's right. That's right. You
The
can't. You can't touch
Keither
this.
Sullivan fan club, and so he knows all about Chris Sutherland. Sutherland.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
you got me
what?
all sorts of fuck.
If you can't say it right, don't say it at all, Colin. Okay? You know?
I tried, man. So again, he's a face you'd know, but maybe not a name. The only thing that he's in that everybody has seen probably was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
He played Taserface.
Taserface. Now, that's not really a recognizable role because he's under makeup and shit, and it looks like his face got tasered, which is kind of a coincidental name.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting that they named him that.
It's not connected, though.
No, it's unrelated. I mean, that's a pretty popular baby name, but, you know.
It was a contender for Willow, but
Taserface?
yeah.
Yeah.
Willa, Taserface. It was like 51-49 on that. It was very close.
She shot it down, and I said, okay, what about a middle name? And she said, we'll think about it, and it never ended up happening.
Yeah.
So.
And you ended up with Willa Laserface Garlington.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is much better.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's, you know, that hard T at the beginning.
Yeah, it's tricky.
I think that's pretty much it in this movie for like recognizable faces. There's a few people in the annals of this movie, if you will, that you might recognize, but no need to go over them. Anybody of note direct this?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Gussus. It does not look like Daniel's career is particularly deep. It looks like this, and it looks like he did a movie about Fritz Haber,
Yeah.
which is also pretty intense. But yeah,
It's kind of like his niche.
a little bit.
So.
Okay, so are we ready to rickety wreck this movie?
Yeah. God, we already tipped our hand a little bit here.
Yep.
I recommend this to people who enjoy picking apart and watching movies. You know, I can't recommend this to average people. I feel like the subject matter is too heavy. They will get turned off immediately. I do feel like there's a well-made movie here. I would recommend it to myself. It's hard for me to recommend a movie with this kind of subject matter to the general audience.
Yeah, it does make you feel weird, like recommending a movie about white supremacy.
Yeah.
It is an uncomfortable thing. However, I do recommend this movie. Again, I'm selective about who I recommend it to. And I do a couple of things I want to call out. First of all, I totally understand and respect that there are now two movies in our catalog, The Green Room and Imperium, that came out about the same time that are both about like
White supremacy.
white supremacy. And I know how like that fucking looks, but they are both great movies and they are both
Honestly,
like
yes.
incredibly intense movies. And I recommend them quite a bit to people, but it is weird that like there are two of them that came out really close together and they are both, I would say that their sort of notable feature is their intensity. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, told you to remind me, Requiem for a Dream. So you were talking about Requiem for a Dream and how fucking like intense and emotionally draining it is. one movie that I always associate with Requiem for a Dream, because my wife and I made the horrible mistake while we were dating. I made her watch Requiem for a Dream and American History X back to back.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. I did it, and like, thank God there were no sharp objects near us, because we probably would have just opened a vein. I mean, we felt so fucking blown out after that. I couldn't even like see straight.
She still married you though.
Barely, buddy. Barely. That was weighed heavily into her decision making. Anyway, I tell that story to say you mentioned Requiem for a Dream. Because of that event, I always associate Requiem for a Dream with American History X. And American History X, in my opinion, is probably the most widely seen film that I think is an absolutely perfect analog to this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
If you watched and enjoyed American History X, if you didn't find the content too disturbing, if you didn't think that the intensity and the casual use of racial slurs and stuff like that was too off-putting or difficult to deal with, you will love this movie. If you like that movie, you will like this movie. I think almost without exception.
Let me also like just put a little asterisk on there. It is off-putting hearing that language. We're not insinuating that like, if you can get over that language.
Yeah.
It is off-putting.
And it should be.
Right. So again, I know that's not what you were saying, but I just
I appreciate you
it a little bit.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely appreciate you mentioning that, because it is true. Like, to make certain movies, you have to incorporate certain things. Otherwise, the absence of that thing becomes notable and problematic and takes you out of the narrative. However, that doesn't make that stuff easy to deal with or something that you can just like, switch off your adverse reaction to, right?
If you're making a movie about white supremacists, you're going to use language that white supremacists would use.
Yeah. It would be noticeable, and unfortunately, as fucked up as it sounds, it would ruin the film to completely omit that language, because you'd be like, why are they talking all flowery and not...
Yeah, why are they speaking in code?
Yeah, basically. That's exactly right. Why are they speaking in code? People who are allegedly, you can't see I'm doing my air quotes, allegedly proud of using this language and causing as much physical, emotional, and psychological harm as possible, right?
Right.
Yes. I appreciate you pointing that out. But yes, so back to my rec, I would recommend this movie. I think my rec sort of lives and dies on, if you've seen American History X and you enjoyed that movie, you will enjoy this movie as well. And similarly, I can't imagine anybody in the entire fucking world having seen Green Room and not American History X. But all three of these movies, similar content, similar intensity, similar production value and performance, and all very good.
Yeah, they're movies about hate.
Yeah,
basically. Which that is such a fundamental human emotion, right? Is like hate and revulsion, and art is supposed to be a reflection of who we are, both the good and the bad, who we want to be. It is supposed to hold a mirror up to individuals, to society, to everybody. Film as art is gonna have to tackle that at some point in the same way that it tackles name your poison, right? Like, anything, human ingenuity and, us wanting to get to the stars and the terror of being, hunted by a giant beast or something like that, right? Like, it's like Jurassic Park or something like that. It's like, it's a fundamental piece of us, is that fear, that hatred, that joy, that elation, whatever emotion you're trying to feel, right? All humans feel those things at some point in their life. And
it's important to look at it.
It's important to actually see it in its base form.
So how about you, Sir Jackson? Would you recommend?
That's tricky. I can't think of anyone specifically that I would recommend this movie to. However, I think if it came up in conversation, if we were having a conversation about hard movies like American History X, like Green Room, like Schindler's List, I think that I would bring it up and say, hey, if you really like these intense movies and you enjoy having your intellect challenged, if you enjoy having discussions and debates over cinema like we do, then this would be a prime candidate for that.
And as we've said before, buckle up, fucko.
Yeah. I would say technically, yes, I would recommend this, but largely no.
Yeah.
I remember my bagpipe instructor when I was about, 13 or 14 or something like that. This made such an impression on me. He was teaching me how to play the song Amazing Grace. And I remember he got like really solemn and he like looked at me and he was like, what I'm going to say to you is not a joke. Be careful. Because this song, and he said this to me, like this 13-year-old, he's like 70 at the time, 80 probably, like looks right in the eye and goes, this song is a fucking weapon. And I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
And he's like, no other song paired with a particular instrument, right? Like the bagpipes will just reduce people to tears. And he's like, I've gotten into like heated debates with people who want it at a wedding or something like that. And he's like, if I played this at a wedding, half the crowd would be in fucking tears because it's going to bring them back to a time and a place where they were burying somebody, where they were, whatever it happens to be. He's like, this song is dangerous, played at the right time. And that stuck with me so much. And I feel like this movie sort of fits with a lot of those other intense movies, right? Where it's like, there's a time and place. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And make sure that the person's in the right state of mind, make sure that they're the person that can kind of handle this level of intensity. But if they can, it's a good, it's a good movie. It's a good song. Similar to, even Seinfeld poked fun at that, right? Like, you made out in Schindler's List? Right? It's like, yeah, they're making fun of it because it's not a date movie.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a movie that should be casually watched.
like watching American History X followed by Requiem for a Dream.
Right. Sometimes you make bad decisions in life, and sometimes you end up really depressed with your girlfriend, and sometimes you end up making out during Schindler's List.
Yeah.
What can I say? Okay, so that's 3 Recs around.
I suppose.
Yeah, I guess.
There's a lot to talk about with this one.
So many talks to be had. Okay, so is it time for blah 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 blah
Blah, blah.
I think Mark, was that a cough?
No,
You weren't clearing your throat?
I was not clearing my throat. The people who know, they know, and the people that don't will ask.
Like Colin did.
Yeah. Could I?
No,
That's
for me. That's for me and the listeners who know. Okay? I see you. You see me. We see each other.
This is a podcast. Nobody can see anybody.
I'm a dude. She's a dude. We're all dudes.
Hey. Okay. So we're
I could really go for a good burger right now.
Yes. I agree.
I hear that's the home of the good burger.
Yeah. Okay, so how does this start?
As all good movies do, it starts with a quote from Hitler.
Oh my god. Yeah, what? No, and the way that they presented it too. No, it was actually, I do want to talk about this for a second because it is really interesting because they give the quote before they cite it, and I'm reading it. I'm like,
that's
okay.
a powerful quote.
Yeah, and like I'm like sitting here resonating with it for a second, and I'm like, oh man, this could be my quote, and then like all of a sudden, boop, Adolf Hitler pops up, and that's not my quote.
Nope.
That's not my quote.
I had the exact same moment where I was like, oh, I should write that down.
But I think that maybe this was even the reason why they did it this way is...
What you're about to say is absolutely the reason they did it. Go ahead.
Yeah. The whole point of this movie is like examining the reasoning and the logic of people who do things that we don't want to empathize with. There are weird wisdoms that can be espoused within contexts that are inappropriate. Just because there is a... How do you say... Oh.
The director of this movie is just fucking loving this conversation right now. So one thing that I love about this movie is, first of all, it takes, I'm going to make a value judgment here, the objectively correct stance that like there is no such thing as an absolutely good or absolutely evil person. We all have the capacity for good and bad within us. And some people choose to do more bad than they do good. Some people choose to do an absolutely immense amount of bad, but that doesn't mean that they're all bad. Even the worst of us are capable of empathy and love and hopes and desires and being prophetic or coming up with something that actually does mean something as far as that like quote is concerned, right? It is a meaningful quote, as much as I hate to admit it because of the person that it came from, right?
Yep.
And I think this movie explores that over and over again, not to jump ahead too much, but one of the primary characters in this movie, right? Like the person is an absolute fucking pile of dog shit from a political and, moral standpoint, but they have a family that they love and they care about and they are representing their best interests. And how do you reconcile with that when what you want to do is just dismiss that person outright as terrible? And the irony that I think the movie shows over and over and over again is our gut reaction is to just dismiss these people. Don't bother to try to understand them. Don't bother to try to empathize with them because they're terrible. And the irony is that is what these people do to all other people, right? Like their base operating procedure is dismiss all black people as bad, dismiss all Jews as bad, dismiss all whatever as bad. Anybody not like me as bad. Don't get to know them. don't get to understand them, don't empathize with them. And like the irony is that makes the people who understand the flaw and the danger and the horrific nature of those thought processes, it makes us want to do that to them, but that reinforces their behavior, right?
If we want to change someone's mind, we have to empathize, and it feels gross.
It feels horrible. Yeah, you're right. But also along those lines, you want to understand these people to try to help stop their hatred, stop what they're doing, and help reverse it, help de-engineer it. But arguably more importantly than stopping the perpetuation of their hatred is stopping the immediacy of potential actions as a result of their hatred. And that is ostensibly what the FBI is doing in this movie, right? It was laughed at, right? Sort of the idea of criminal psychology and behavioral sciences as a means to catch criminals and dangerous people, back in the 60s and 70s, right? And like, that's what they're doing here, right? It's like, I need to understand them because I need to stop whatever the hell they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And so it's this sort of 1-2 punch of like, A, long-term goals. I want to stop the way that their hatred is like infectious and permeating every aspect of society. B, I need to stop what they're going to do like fucking now.
Yeah, I need to stop the bombing that they're planning tomorrow, but I also need to stop the subsequent actions that they're going to take. I need to stop the immediacy as well as the greater scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like a much less extreme example is, we all have family members who we have disagreements with, politically or whatnot. I think that, like you said, it's really easy to dismiss people that have different viewpoints. But if you actually want to bring a family member with you and to help them grow as a human being, you have to first acknowledge their humanity. It's profound. Maybe I'll just leave it.
Yeah, it's also way easier said than done, right? Like I'm not sitting there pretending like I do this all the time. Like I'm absolutely the person who like on the surface is just like, yeah, fuck those guys. Like, like fuck Nazis, fuck white supremacists, right? Yeah. Like I'm not the guy who's like all the time sitting there in consternation, like, how do we understand these people better? But the movie's primary thesis lands well in the sense that like you don't get anywhere by dismissal, you get somewhere by action and effort towards understanding them better for a myriad of reasons.
And ironically, that's a great tie-in to the major plot points of this movie. Is a lot of the people that we see interacting are just loud talkers. They talk a big game, but they don't actually do a whole lot of anything. And so our FBI agents are looking for the men of action.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So basically, after this quote that we just sort of expanded on and kind of waxed philosophic about, it immediately goes into a very intense scene where a young man of color who is of, I want to say, was he Kenyan?
I think so.
The Kenyan descent, or not descent, he was from,
his parents came to America with him.
Yeah,
He was born in Africa.
A young African man who had clearly become very angry, very disillusioned, and had connections to Al-Shabaab, yada yada. He basically gets set up and raided by the FBI, and he is sort of, as you are in those situations, right? Confused, lost, doesn't know what's happening, but he did participate in an attempted terrorist attack. And Daniel Radcliffe comes in to talk to him after he's in his interrogation room, talks to him in Arabic fluently, which is kind of interesting to see Daniel Radcliffe just rattling off Arabic.
Yeah.
And so it does a couple of things. It establishes Daniel's character. What's his name again?
Nate Thomas.
Oh, okay. So it establishes Nate as someone who is able to connect with and empathize with people who maybe he doesn't align with, but he sees their humanity and he's able to like unlock avenues of communication that he would not have otherwise been able to. That then kind of builds into a scene at the FBI where they're talking about other potential organizations or like terrorist cells. And the theme is like, these are all like Muslim organizations. And there's an interesting, I forget how it kind of comes in naturally, but it's made painfully aware that they're only looking for people who have religious ties to Islam.
Yeah. So like following the interrogation room, Daniel Radcliffe's like sitting at his desk and then gets called into this meeting that Mark's describing. And he gets called in a way that like, I've actually heard this about the FBI in the same way that I've actually heard this about doctors, is like medical doctors, from what I hear, again, I'm not a doctor, there's this sort of like joke or running theme that surgeons are a bit jockey, are a bit bro-y, are a bit cliquey, and sort of internal medicine doctors are a bit nerdy, are a bit fastidious, whatever. I've heard the same thing about the FBI between field agents and analyst agents and sort of like research-based agents. And it's like a 5-second scene that I'm like, expounding on for like 10 fucking minutes here. But like this gets established very quickly in that like 3 guys who are very clearly like field operatives, throw a fucking football at him and kind of tease him and like call him into this meeting. And it's clear that he is not well respected. He is not well treated. He is kind of made the laughingstock. He's very lonely and introverted. And then they go into this meeting that Mark's describing, and the setup that you were talking about, Toni Collette raises her hand and is basically like, why aren't we looking at domestic terrorists? And they're like, well, so they're talking about missing cesium. Cesium's a radioactive element, and this cesium came from Boston to somewhere else. And by the time it made it somewhere else, there were 8 canisters, and now there's 2. So there are 6 missing canisters of radioactive material that they suspect is going to be used to make a dirty bomb, which is where you can't make the radioactive material actually like undergo, critical mass and explode the way like a nuclear weapon works.
Yeah,
so instead, you just blow it up with conventional weapons and spread the radioactive material all fucking over an area, and it irradiates. Horrific. The fucking worst weapon you could possibly imagine. The worst weapon.
Because the explosive impact, sure, it's going to blow up maybe a small building or a bunch of trucks, but the radioactive descent from that is going to affect the entire
community.
They're in DC, right? And this bomb that they were talking about would blow up a building. They had bomb plans from old bombs and previous plots. The bomb itself would blow up a small building, but the radioactivity would sweep over the entire greater DC area, affecting millions of people
for the next 5 to 10,000 years.
Yeah,
just killing indiscriminately.
Like there's no way you could remediate that, right?
The half-life of the compound that they were using was 30 years. So you're talking an entire generation that is directly affected, and then every generation after that indirectly affected.
So basically, the cesium disappears, and Toni Collette's like, what about domestic terrorism? And they're like, well, the cesium came from North Africa, so we suspect a link to some organization like Al-Shabaab, so we're looking at Islamic terrorists.
But he says something very poignant that was very directed and clearly remaining professional under the heat of opposition. He just looks her dead in the eyes and has that, like, fuck you look on his face and says, well, obviously we encourage any opportunity to explore any leads that you have. And then just continues on.
Yeah, after she like basically makes
shits the bed right all over him.
Well, she like makes this this incredibly compelling argument. She's like, the last time somebody tried to build a dirty bomb on U.S. soil, it was a white nationalist.
Yep.
And basically every time something like this has come up, like this is their playbook.
Yeah.
You should be looking at them. And she like rattles off, half a dozen names, and she's like, these are the fucking people that we should be exploring, looking at, that kind of thing. And then she taps Daniel Radcliffe on the shoulder.
Right.
And says, hey, why don't you come down to my office and
we're gonna do some fishing.
We'll talk. We're gonna talk.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, Toni Collette, she taps Daniel Radcliffe's character, and she brings up his ability to talk to that young man who was involved in that. It was kind of a sting operation, but the guy who was arrested in the first scene there, he was able to really empathize with him and communicate with him in a more effective way. And that's what she wanted. She wanted somebody who could infiltrate an organization and could open up means of communication that you wouldn't be able to if you weren't able to like read a room, to emotionally connect with people. And she saw a lot of that in him, and that was what she was trying to make use of.
Yeah, that, and then she also made specific mention of him, right? He is, I'll jump the gun a little bit here, but one sort of through line in this movie, and believe it or not, I'm not a particularly religious man, but one religious-ish line that I do love is, there but for the grace of God go I. That, to me, is a particularly powerful line, and that is exactly why she targeted him, because his life was a life that would have set him up to very easily slip into the path that a lot of these young, angry men have found themselves in, right? And it's the same story no matter where you are, whether it's white supremacy in the US, or it's a member of Al-Qaeda in Syria, or it's a member of the Triad in China, like wherever the fuck you are, there are young, angry, typically male people who feel disenfranchised, oppressed, they feel downtrodden.
Often abandoned.
They have no hope. They have nobody to help inspire and sort of shepherd them into adulthood, and they are very, very easy targets for recruitment into organizations that are built on hate and resentment.
They add fuel to the fire.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it just becomes insanely pervasive.
And those traits that make those young people easy to prey on, he had virtually all of them. He was introverted. He was picked on. He moved around a bunch as a kid. He never had friends. He was bullied in school.
Grew up an only child.
And single parent.
Yep.
Right? Like, all of these sort of factors culminate in a character that they're
looking for something that they haven't had.
Yeah, and a character who, like, there but for the grace of God, right? Like, he happened to find his way onto a very legitimate and respectable path. He's a law enforcement officer with the FBI, but he very easily could have slipped down this road.
Yeah.
And she knew, because of his past, it would be very easy for him to communicate, empathize, and get these people to open up about their plans and let them into his organization.
Right.
He knows what to say and how to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I don't want to like jump forward here, but one of the interesting things too is that this movie shows that it's not always the people who are obviously or outwardly broken that can be the scariest.
Yeah.
And we'll get to it as we kind of go through the narrative here, but sometimes the scariest people are the people that don't look the scariest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so she recruits him. Again, he is not a field agent. He's never been in the field. He's fucking terrified.
And he's going undercover.
And he's going undercover with some seriously dangerous fucking people. And they basically get him into the field. They use a confidential informant to hook him up with a local skinhead gang who he infiltrates very quickly. He sort of like makes friends with and impresses very quickly because he is considerably more intelligent than they are. I would say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you guys agree that?
No, 100%.
He was always sort of one step ahead of them intellectually. He had the ability to answer their very sort of knuckle-dragging questions, right?
Well, they were operating out of emotion. You know, they were very reactive, so they were easily manipulated, you know, if you knew what to do.
You can't always draw a hard line between these two things because they operate very similarly, but those guys that he initially joined were more like a gang, not a terrorist organization.
Right. They were a couple of thugs that found a cause and didn't exactly read all of the literature.
They read a quote.
Yeah.
And then they were like...
And then ran with it.
And then, yeah. So he very quickly marches through this...
Interesting choice of words there.
Yeah, that was a curious Freudian slip. So he very quickly sort of rises in the ranks, if you will, through this gang type thing. Ends up impressing and getting hooked up with more, you hate to call them established, but that's exactly what they are, right?
That's
like
what they are.
More established organizations, you know, other types of hate groups, but in their organization could be probably more formally classified as true terrorist organizations.
Yeah, I think he bumped shoulders with some folks from the KKK at one point, the Aryan Brotherhood at one point.
Who, like, that KKK guy, like, they cast him, like, it was a subtle bit of comedy, right?
Yeah.
Because he was, like, the most, like, Steve Urkel-looking motherfucker, like, with these big, thick... I said Steve Urkel, I meant, like, Screech.
Yeah.
It's like Screech-looking motherfucker with these, like, even though Screech didn't have glasses, these big, thick glasses. He looked like
he looked like a Boy Scout.
He looked like Eugene from Grease. You guys remember Eugene?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He looked like Eugene from Grease. And he's like, you know, I'm the Grand Wizard of Berberbur. And, you know,
Anybody who calls themselves a grand wizard unironically, I just stop.
Unless you're in the middle of a D&D campaign.
Yeah.
Then it's fine.
Even then, there's no grand wizard in D&D. It's just wizards.
It's probably for the best.
Ugh.
Yeah, but you also don't want to, like, give them that term, right? You don't want to let them win that. I don't know. I'm not saying we should take it back.
Just saying when a crazy dog has a hold of something, you just let him have it.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But anyway, he goes to this barbecue more or less, and he's meeting all these people. And as the viewer, you're kind of getting a taste that not all white supremacist groups are the same, and they have different motivations, and they have different, you know, modes. You know, their MOs are different.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the barbecue because absolutely right. That was the whole point of the barbecue, was to show that there are so many different faces of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not all exactly what you would expect. He sent the license plates to Toni Collette's character, and she's like, most of these people don't even have a fucking parking ticket. It's a lawyer. It's a butcher. It's a pharmacist. It's a this. It's a that. You know, like, it's an engineer.
School teacher.
Very, you know, respectable, upstanding members of community who on Sunday just happen to be going to barbecues where the cupcakes have swastikas on them.
And they did.
Oh,
and they absolutely did.
Oh, that would hurt.
It hurt, but I gotta say, I absolutely loved it because it drove that home, right? It drove
And it was
home how
so
This is
casual.
Yeah,
casual
this is in the
it was.
This is our way of life. Another archetype that we could talk about, but I feel like his arc doesn't end up going anywhere, at least with regard to the main narrative of the story, is the talk show host. No, I forget what his name was, but like
Dallas Wolf.
yeah, who is very outspoken. About
He's Rush Limbaugh.
Yep.
That's going in. He's fucking He's Rush Limbaugh.
That's him.
Or he's Alex Jones.
That was my
Yes.
immediate
He's Alex
thought,
Jones.
Was Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, like your classic.
Well, like, I think, not to split hairs here, but I feel like an Alex Jones and a Rush Limbaugh, there is a line between them. I think a lot of conversation could be had about where that line lands.
Yeah.
And I think that many people would have different opinions. But the way that this particular, he says the bad stuff out loud, you know?
Yeah.
He walks in rallies. He does not shy away from saying the quiet part in a way that maybe other people with advertisers wouldn't. But ultimately, that also cracks. And again, I don't feel like it's jumping too far away because it doesn't really direct the narrative as much as some other things.
Well, and I think you're right to bring him up because basically the whole reason that Daniel Radcliffe is in the skinhead organization is because allegedly the person who heads that gang had ties to this guy. And this guy was out there talking about the way these guys have a tendency to do. They flap their gums and, oh, the end is coming. And, you know, the war's on its way and it's this and it's that and blah, blah, blah. And he made some passing reference to, I've got it on good authority that there's some radioactive material that came into the country and blah, blah, blah. Like literally at the time that this cesium went missing and Toni Collette caught it and was like, hold the fuck up.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to get to him to figure out what he knew about the missing radioactive material.
Yeah, so Daniel Radcliffe's whole job is to get to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And he does.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe's character like makes some overt statements and some overt actions to try to provoke Dallas's character into taking a step further.
And showing his hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it doesn't go anywhere. Dallas's character ends up going to the FBI and sitting down in an interrogation room where he basically just kind of spells out like, hey, I'm an entertainer. I'm a radio show host. I make money from telling people what they want to hear. I don't have these beliefs, but people eat it up. And again, a lot of conversation could be had about the complicit nature of that setup.
But that is a very real setup.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to say this stuff not because I believe it, but because
I make money off it.
Yeah, I make money. Exactly. Like people pay me to get angry about shit.
And who knows whether or not that is him protecting his cover or whether that is truly just the case. He is just an entertainer who says the quiet part out loud.
I think it's probably a little bit of both.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like it's probably like yeah,
he wouldn't say it if he didn't believe it, but he probably isn't an extremist.
Well, he's clearly not an extremist. Like, you know, he was given the opportunity to do or be something extreme.
Yeah.
And he went to the FBI and said, I don't want to be associated with this. Like, you know, he clearly is not a true believer in that sense, but he probably does hold these beliefs. I don't believe that this guy is like voting for Obama.
No.
You know, like, or I don't think he's secretly sending donations to the NAACP.
No.
Yeah.
One other thing that we need to talk about with Dallas Wolf, who I'm going to sometime at this podcast accidentally call Dallas Page. And he's not Diamond Dallas Page, but one person he does look and sound so fucking much like is Jeff Daniels.
Yes.
Oh
my
I
God.
thought the same thing. For a second, I thought it was him, and I was about to be really excited.
So much like Jeff Daniels. And one of the big things that they both do, which is a kind of an uncommon thing, is they're extremely heavy and floppy in their B's. So it's like, probably, you know, like Richard Nixon did it a little bit too,
Yeah.
right? It's like their mouth kind of flops out, their cheeks and their lips kind of flop out when they pronounce their B's. And it's such a distinctive thing that, like, in combination with the fact that he looks kind of like Jeff Daniels,
And sounds a little bit
he
like
sounds
Jeff
so
Daniels.
much like him. It's you forget almost when you're watching it.
Yeah.
So that's a little non-racially charged aside for you about this movie.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Good stuff. This is the kind of fun fodder that you come for, right?
Yeah,
It's Jeff Daniels, Dumb and Dumber, poop scene. Remember the poop scene?
Yeah, I do remember the poop scene.
That was a good scene.
It was a pivotal moment.
I think that was a
Pivotal poop.
defining moment. As somebody who lives with IBS, that was a defining moment in my life when I saw that.
You felt represented?
Yeah, it was like, I'm out here, these are my people. This is my people.
We've all been on a date where we spread shit all over the walls and towels and...
3. I have been on 3 dates where it has ended like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not Good.
I'm not proud of that fact. I'm just saying, like, numbers is numbers.
That's
See,
fair.
that goes back to the whole, is 3 a lot? That depends. Sodas? Not really. Times you shit your pants in your girlfriend's bathroom? Yeah.
I mean, it's more than you want, for sure, you know?
It is more than you want, yeah. How many times do you really want to do that, right? Probably less than 1.
Yeah.
But probably more than -1.
Yeah.
It's called 0.
Yeah.
The number of times you want to do that.
Yeah.
So one of the other characters that he meets at this barbecue is, and I forget the character's name.
Are you talking about Jerry?
Maybe the Aryan Brotherhood guy?
Oh,
Big
Andrew.
dude. Andrew. Okay. He is a militia type.
He's played by Chris Sullivan that we mentioned.
Yes.
Taserface.
Yes. Yep.
Mr. Sutherland.
Mr. Sutherland. He is like a tremendously imposing and intimidating guy.
He's huge.
Like, he is definitely one of those people that, like, you see them on the screen and you're like, if I saw that motherfucker in real life and he was mean mugging me, I would turn around and walk away.
Like, if they cast that guy as Paul Bunyan, they wouldn't need to use a whole lot of CGI. We're talking like 6'6", like 245. Like, this is a big dude.
And I don't know, like, is that, like, I don't know if that's the way they shoot him. Like, he's got to be at least big because
he's a big dude.
He's a big dude, but, like, I don't know how much they whoop it up and how much is, like, actually him, but, like, the way they shoot it, dude, that dude seems like a fucking
terrifying
brick shithouse.
And a lot of scenes that we saw him in, he was also playing opposite Daniel Radcliffe, who has a smaller frame too.
Let's just say diminutive stature.
Yeah. Anyway, so this particular variety of white supremacists drinks the Kool-Aid. You know, they're just as passionate about their beliefs as the skinhead punks, but they're not out harassing people on the street. They go to the woods and they collect guns and they plan for
race war.
Yeah.
Perhaps an insurrection. If you
will.
Oh, he went there. That is staying in the podcast.
Maybe not.
They have a warehouse, like a bunker full of, he mentions 200 cots, and they have crates and crates of guns and a homebrewed firing range. And he brings Daniel Radcliffe into the compound and shows him the plans that he has for disseminating toxic chemicals into the DC water supply. And, like, they are serious.
Basically, it was the same place that the band in Green Room ended up.
Pretty much.
Right? It's a compound run by a flavor of white supremacists.
But one of the interesting things about that particular branch is that they mesh their beliefs on race with their religion, with their spirituality, in a way that some of the other versions of this type of despicable person don't. You know?
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, how much of any one element they all bring in, right? Like, the skinheads notably have, like, less of a religious bend. They have more of a violent end. They have zero, seemingly, family bend, you know, whereas, like, this organization was, like, probably less on the, at least, direct violence, more on the, you know, religion, more on the...
preparing for war.
Yeah, more on the, like, stockpiling and doomsdaying, and more on, like, the Hitler.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas, like, as compared to the KKK, at least as depicted in this movie, which are, like, still some Hitler, but comparatively less Hitler. But, you know, you're playing with all these dials, and it's interesting to see the different profiles of these groups and how they all sort of, like, unite under one absolutely horrifically shitty banner, but they are so fundamentally different in so many ways.
Yeah. And I guess moving on to that last version, again, they used the KKK as, I guess...
and also these guys.
Yeah. I don't think that they were trying to insinuate that of the whole batch of shitheads that the KKK is somehow more intellectual, but they did sort of like frame it that like these are the guys who don't look like the bad guy.
Yeah, you're right. They definitely...
They're portrayed more intelligently, but sort of.
Yeah, you're right.
Initially.
Yeah, you're right. In the sense that, like, so the skinheads and the, Aryan Nation types, they are, I'm going to love using this term because they would absolutely despise being described this way, but they are living out loud. They are like wearing fucking like swastikas on their clothes when they go to the grocery store. They have tattoos, you know, of this shit. But the KKK, as is in oftentimes in real life, right? Like they're people
closeted.
Yeah, these are people. They're closeted. These are people in the community. You don't know that they're in this fucking organization, and that's
Scary.
terrifying.
Well, and that goes back to the bit we said earlier about Toni Collette's character. She pulled the license plates on these people at this backyard barbecue, and a lot of these people are members of the KKK. But again, they're engineers and school teachers and lawyers and your local pharmacist, grocery store clerks. These are everyday people that we come across every single day, and they don't say the quiet part out loud.
No, they're not like the editor of Race War Monthly.
No.
Yeah. And there's at the barbecue, and I don't know if it was that barbecue, if there was a different one, but like you see one of these guys, we got to figure out like a way to call it, but one of the KKK guys or whatever, chastising another guest at the barbecue for using profanity around his kids.
Yeah, that was Jerry. And Jerry is a pivotal character in this narrative as well. I feel kind of bad because we're sort of jumping all over the timeline here.
I think it's okay.
But for the purposes of explaining the finer points of this movie, I feel like we do need to take it in batches. You know?
No, for sure.
Because we kind of covered his interactions with the Nazi punks, the supremacist punks, and we kind of covered his interactions.
And as the dead Kennedys would say, they can fuck off.
Yeah, and they should. And we covered his interactions with the militia largely. And there's some finer points that we can go over as well. But I hate to use this word about this subject matter, but I'm going to say it. I was really excited to talk about his interactions with Jerry.
Absolutely.
Because I feel that's where the meat and potatoes of this story is. So Jerry is part of the movement. He's part of the community. And he is just this really magnetic, charismatic person. And it always brings me back to, some of the world leaders throughout history that have turned out to be fascists and dictators and leaders of very, very pervasive and damaging movements have been pleasant and charismatic people.
Yeah.
And Jerry fits the bill perfectly. He's soft. He's very intelligent. He's pleasant and easy to talk to. He listens to classical music and drinks tea in his foyer. He has very passionate conversations, and
his wife makes swastika cupcakes.
Yeah.
And he says things that are on the face seemingly polite. Like he says, I don't think they shouldn't have like a nation. Like everybody deserves a country, he's not showing respect, but like
he thinks he's trying to be reasonable.
Yeah, he frames it in such a way that like it makes you think, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe I don't agree with everything he says, but like, yeah, I'll sit down, I'll have a beer with him. Like,
but it's the prime example of
it's what makes it so dangerous.
Someone finds themselves looking for a leader, and he is able to just effortlessly seduce them into the movement and bring them behind enemy lines. He's one of those people that, because he's so pleasant and magnetic, and because he clearly has money, because he has a very nice house on a large property, his family is beautiful, his wife is gorgeous, his kids are awesome. Like, he is the quintessential American nuclear family man. And
just happens to be a leader in the white supremacist community.
And so Daniel Radcliffe's character has multiple conversations with him. Usually they're in the foyer listening to Brahms or Mozart. And as the intensity of the movie ramps up and we're clearly getting to some sort of climax where like shit's about to hit the fan, he goes to Jerry and drops off these books that he borrowed from him. And it leads to a conversation about being men of action and being heroes in a leaderless resistance and wanting to do more, wanting to be the change you see in the world.
So wholesome.
His connection with Jerry is so immediate and powerful because, again, back to that there but for the grace of God thing, like, of all of the characters he's interacted with, Jerry is very clearly the one that he would most likely, if he had taken the darker path, the wrong path, right, he would most likely be like, right? Daniel Radcliffe in this movie, his character is extremely intelligent. he's not a genius, but he's
perceptive. He's creative.
He is well above average, and he is capable, and he is empathic, and he's soft, and he's feeling, he's a very emotional guy, which again, that could be the reason why you get recruited into these types of things. But he connected with him so quickly because they were so similar. Also, the scene that Jackson is describing where like he comes to drop off some books and they're connecting and they go over the Men of Action thing. Daniel Radcliffe is distraught in this scene because it is immediately preceded by the scene where Dallas Wolfe, who we thought was going to be the person who really like knew what this plot was, turned in Daniel Radcliffe and went to the FBI, and everything just like took a big old nasty shit. And everybody was like, your case just fucking exploded. Like, everybody's mad at everybody. Your career is going to evaporate.
You're done.
And Daniel Radcliffe is very distraught. He's very upset. He's mad at Toni Collette for putting him through all this shit. And then literally was just dropping off books. And then this guy starts in with his we need to be willing to do stuff and we need to change the world and we need to blah, blah, blah. It's beautiful because they're having this conversation on the couch and they're saying the same things and meaning completely different stuff. They're basically, I don't want to say they're meaning completely different stuff. They're both talking about being men of action, changing the world for the better, leaving a better world for our kids, helping the world get better in every way possible, except one of them is a Nazi shithead who thinks the correct way is to exterminate all other races and impose a fascist regime. And Daniel Radcliffe is saying it, not out loud, obviously, but from the standpoint of I wanted to make a difference as an agent of the law who is upholding democracy and the U.S. Constitution. And it's fascinating to watch these two characters say the same thing in the same way, but mean very different things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, and I loved that conversation. I thought it was beautifully done because at some point, Jerry says something to Daniel that makes his entire demeanor change. And he kind of perks up and goes, "What are you getting at?" And he's like, "Well, I made some improvements to the treehouse. Why don't you come take a look?" And they walk outside and he's like, "All right, so here's the deal. We have frank conversations outside." And then he goes into the real meat and potatoes. He's like, "We need somebody that can get their hands on
this and that,
and the other in order to make this happen."
Yep.
And so then he introduces him to his connections within the KKK. And that's when you realize who Jerry actually is.
Which is interesting because you don't ever get the sense that, again, what we were talking, I guess that's probably very realistic, but you never get the sense that he's really in the KKK.
No,
the other guys, you get the sense that they're in the organization.
Right.
He feels again,
he's not a bad guy.
He feels I was saying it feels like his connection with the KKK is the same as it is with the Aryan whatever fuck and the skinhead shit boxes. He's related.
He's part of the movement.
He's part of the community, the movement, but he's also keeping his distance. He wouldn't call himself a member of any of those particular organizations. But you're right, his connection to the KKK is maybe a little bit more explicit than the others. So maybe he is a member and they just didn't whoop it up too much.
Well, because he was present for some of the, I feel like there was more than one, but there were a few cross burnings. One was at a wedding and stuff like that. So he was.
Yeah, because who doesn't want a wedding with a good cross burning? Am I right?
Yeah, definitely.
Jeez.
Definitely.
I had less than one of those. I think I had less than 0 of these.
Yeah, I also had less than 0 of those.
If you could have less than 0 cross burnings at your wedding, I think that's what I had.
Strive.
I strove for that.
Yeah.
I strove for that. I talked to the wedding planner and I was like, "Listen, how do I get negative cross burnings at this event?"
We burned cigars. We just firewood.
Yeah, we made it a donation to the ACLU.
Yeah.
That is a negative cross burning.
Yeah. You got any burning swastikas? Yeah, just leave us at home.
Yeah. Just we don't need them here.
Nope.
Bust them out whenever what's his name, James Shithead, is coming around.
Yeah. Good old James Shithead. So this conversation that he's having with Jerry.
Jerry. I said James.
Jerry
Shithead.
Same thing.
My bad.
Same thing. Ultimately leads to him being brought into, I guess, kind of the climax of the movie. He's exposed to some plans to
build the dirty bomb.
Yeah, to build that dirty bomb. That sounded like a slogan. I didn't like that.
Build that dirty bomb.
Build that dirty bomb.
But that's it. Also, not to make light of dirty bombs, but come on, dirty bombs. That's a sexual thing somewhere.
I guarantee it is.
Is it something that you have to build? Because I'm sorry, but any kind of sexual device that you have to build, that's heavy equipment, man. That's hardware, and you're building one called the dirty bomb.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
What does it do?
I don't want to know.
What does the dirty bomb do?
Nah, it's too obscured.
Is it okay? Hang on. Whoa.
It's shielded.
Whoa. No.
By the
No.
dirt.
Hang on. When you build the dirty bomb for a sexual activity and then deploy it, is that how you get the Goopadoop?
Oh, I think you become the Goopadoop.
Oh no.
No, it's peripherally related. It's the same set of positions, it's just different outcomes.
Yeah, there's like so it's like a linked on the wiki page, right? Like
Yeah.
if you are on Dirty Bomb or Goopadoop, there will be a reference to the other.
Oh, yeah.
Jackson is trying so hard right now.
I don't like it.
I'm kind of ready to make a jump forward. You guys cut me off or interject, throw something in there if you need to, but it all kind of leads to a garage where they're building the bombs and the FBI is made aware and they end up busting in and stopping the whole affair, really. And then kind of more like credits, I suppose. I mean, there's some poignant statements and some very interesting, thought-provoking scenes that come out of that. But that scene where they're raiding the garage and they're removing the bombs, I mean, that's what everything led to, you know?
Yeah, that is absolutely the climax. Like the falling action was pretty quick. It was like him getting celebrated at work, him decompressing with Toni Collette and talking about his next career move, and then him reconnecting with one of the young members of the skinhead gang who ended up
Changing his ways.
Yeah, basically realizing not only what he was doing, but why he was doing it, which is, I think, the most important thing, right?
At least it didn't get blown away in a bathroom,
Yeah.
which is what I thought was going to happen next.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's exactly what that was.
Because it absolutely was set up that way. But yeah, no, so he basically is like now talking to kids about why he ended up the way he ended up and how he changed his life and how they can avoid having to go through that same stuff. And I would say after that, pretty much roll credits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Woof.
Woof. Fucking woof.
Dude.
Even talking about it, woof.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like I watched the movie all over again describing it, and it is like, it's fucking intense, man.
It is fascinating though, because like there is a part of me as a person who enjoys learning about things that I am not familiar with. Okay. As just a really benign, like just blanket statement. And this exposed us to nuances in a community that I don't want to learn more about, but I still find those nuances interesting in that I'd never really considered the barriers between mindsets in that community as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, like, the reason that these movies are so interesting, the reason we like watching these movies is the exact same reason why we like watching documentaries on serial killers. It is the exact same fucking thing. It is this morbid fascination with somebody who thinks so unbelievably differently than yourself. And you look at them and you're like, you're not that different from me on the surface. What the fuck is going on in your brain that makes you want to do this?
Right.
And there is a motivation to understand it because it's so aberrant from what you're used to. And there's nothing that truly satisfies. If anything, like the itch gets worse because oftentimes what you find is like these people are just like you and you can't put your finger on why they went this way and you went that way. But that doesn't stop the fascination, right? It doesn't stop the interest. You want to know the answer. Okay, so what did we like about this movie? I've got so many notes that I, believe it or not, have not gotten to.
Yeah, I liked the message. The meat and potatoes of this movie for me was, we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but scratching at empathizing or scratching at understanding some of the mindset of hate and how it can be displayed. I don't know. I'm still kind of digesting it. I enjoyed the perspectives and how they were dissected and how they rippled off of each other. I don't know. One of the beautiful things about this particular podcast is that it's not a well-reasoned review. This podcast is meant to hit us in the gut and provoke these sort of like reactions. And I'm still kind of reacting. I'm still processing this movie. And I'm sure a lot of that's coming out in what I'm saying. But I enjoyed the dissection of this repugnant community. And, you know,
it sounds like when you're talking, it sounds like you're like at a podium and you're talking to the community you're describing. It's like, I enjoyed the dissection of this repugnant community.
How I'm trying to communicate.
No, you're totally right. It just sounded like you sounded a little JFK there.
It was fascinating. It was interesting. It was intriguing.
We are going to dissect this repugnant community, not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yeah. But like it made me feel gross. It made me feel things. And I like being provoked into feeling things too. I
don't go around feeling things anymore, Mark. That's how you got your restraining order.
What Mama don't know, don't hurt her. Okay?
Mama's listening.
Mama knows. It was in the news.
Mama's paying attention.
Well, I hope it's not in the news now.
So I will say this. There's a lot that I really liked about this movie, both in the subject matter and the technical aspects of what goes into making a movie. For example, cinematography.
How was the sweeping vistas? Was that good?
So here's the thing. From a cinematography perspective, this movie was simple because it didn't need all the flash and all of the exciting, creative ways of shooting.
So it's interesting you say that. I would disagree.
Well, there are a couple of exceptions, but largely this movie didn't rely on creative camera shots. One of my favorite techniques that they used in this movie was during periods of exposition, they would essentially do clip shows.
Yeah, like compilations.
Compilations of Nazi history, Aryanism, white nationalism, white supremacy, and they would pepper in images from Nazi Germany, from life in the USA in the 60s, life in the USA in the 90s, and they showed actual real-life examples of serial killers, white supremacists, and murderers that have committed acts of domestic terrorism on par with what they were planning to do in this movie. And one of them that jumped off the screen and hit me in the face like a ton of bricks was Kyle Rittenhouse. His image was in the clip show.
Was it?
Yes.
Was that before this movie?
Well, oh yeah.
I'm not convinced of that.
No, I don't think so.
When did this movie come out again?
16.
That happened during Trump's presidency, and Trump took office in
17, 18.
Yeah, January 2017.
Maybe it wasn't Kyle Rittenhouse. Who was the guy that blew up the black church?
Oh, I did not commit his name to memory.
Shit, it's really gonna bug me.
They're going to be on a fucking list when you go.
I know.
Blow up the black
Church.
This podcast might get us on a list. We have said the word bomb, terrorist, DC like 50 fucking times, and they're going to scan this fucking thing.
I'll find it later. But what I was talking about was the clip shows showing acts of domestic terrorism, and they did that forward. And then later in the movie, almost at the eventual climax, they play a different clip show of different images, but in reverse. And all of the images and video shots from that clip show were from the film.
Right.
So they were comparing and contrasting real life examples of white supremacy and white nationalism with the acts portrayed in the film as essentially a mirror image. And I thought that was really beautifully and creatively done.
It made me uncomfortable.
It made me uncomfortable, and it was supposed to.
Right.
Yeah, that was its job. That was the chief thing that I was going to point to as far as cinematography is.
Yeah.
I thought that was like an amazingly creative device to basically keep the hackles up on the back of your neck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're feeling comfortable, you're slipping into the narrative a little bit. Nope, here's a whole bunch of fucking hate images while we do a little bit of exposition.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was amazingly creative. All right, should I rattle off some bullet points to you guys and
Sure.
see how they bounce off you? Okay, I wrote down, it is so fucked up to hear so many great quotes and references so wildly misused. Like,
Yes.
there are so many quotes from, like, the great thinkers in the world, like, truly great philosophers and you know, leaders in history, and to hear them being casually quoted by, like, again, back to that conversation of that they had on the couch where they're having the same fucking conversation, but their motivations and their goals are completely different. That's exactly what happens with the quotes and the references in this movie is like, you're like, oh my God, that is a brilliant quote that can really inspire and lift people up. Why is it being said by a Nazi in support of their ideology? What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that going on in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about it. It's not racially charged. It's got nothing to do with white nationalism. Toni Collette's gum chewing in this movie.
Oh my God.
It is so fucking amazingly obnoxious, but I have to admit, very on brand for her character, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
The way she fucking pops her gum when she's trying to make a point, I was just like, yeah.
And the gum is always in her mouth. It's
Yep.
never not in her mouth. Like, every time her character is in the scene, she is obnoxiously chewing.
Well, and so here's what it told me. When they go down to her little office in her little, like, her office is basically on an abandoned floor.
It's a broom cupboard.
Yeah. And she walks in there and she immediately lights up a cigarette and says, this is one of the little perks of working down here. And every other scene, we see her with gum in her mouth. And I'm like, it's an oral fixation because she's been been smoking for a very long time.
Yeah, she even says in that scene, she said the gum doesn't do shit.
Yeah.
But it is tremendously obnoxious. Let's see. Okay, we mentioned this a couple times, but I feel like one last time we need to mention the cupcakes with the swastikas.
Oh my God.
Because it's so bizarre. It's like he goes to this barbecue and the wife of one of the guys like shows up and she's like, "Do you want a cupcake? I baked them fresh. Sorry, the frosting's a little messy." Yeah. And there's just swastikas on all of them.
But you know what? I appreciate that. Like if I'm going to a party, like I want to know. I'd rather be on the cupcakes than hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
If
you're
I showed
saying
up at
that
a family backyard barbecue and it was just secretly a white nationalism.
Yeah.
Good point.
I can get the fuck out of there.
You know what? That's a very valid argument.
I don't want to be in the backyard having a beer and then it comes out.
Yeah,
because then it's awkward.
Yeah, then you're like, oh, I gotta go. Blah, blah, blah.
Especially if it gets raided and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exactly.
But
I did not eat the cupcake officer.
The cupcake, like, it could be anything. One thing I really enjoy about the cupcake scene is it reinforces, again, we were talking about how casual it is, but it also reinforces this like idea that we were talking about where like, just because these people are absolutely horrible, terrible, no good, very bad people does not mean that like they don't bake cupcakes.
Right.
Hitler wasn't like out there like kicking every dog he saw or like just burns every building down he saw. Like,
no, he was majorly interested in art and philosophy and the finer points of life.
But that is what makes it dangerous.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That is the reason why that is so much more dangerous than a fucking punk skinhead, you know?
Because you can see them a mile off and you're like, cool, I'm going to avoid that guy.
It's their humanity that makes them so effective.
Yeah.
And that's what's dangerous.
Oh, well, I ate the cupcake, so I guess I'm a Nazi now. Like, but I just always felt, and they shot it this way. They shot it to be impactful.
Yep.
They shot it so it would be casual and the viewer would react to it like, oh my God, she's just casually offering him cupcakes with fucking swastikas on it. Anyway, it was a brilliant, very subtle, but immensely effective device.
Yes.
I'm very pleased that they put that in the movie. Definitely squarely in my likes. I just wrote, my heart beats harder when I watch this movie. It's so fucking intense.
Yeah. Oh
Like-
my God.
Like my adrenaline is like blown out at this point. I feel like washed. To Mark's earlier point about all of the different fun and exciting flavors that fascism and white nationalism comes in, I wrote, the creep factor is how many forms this shit takes.
Yeah.
That's the creep factor, right? Is like, if there was one face of it, you could tackle it. But it's myriad different people with different motivations, and it takes completely different forms in those circumstances.
It takes all types.
And it's very scary in that way because it's a fucking hydra.
Well, because some of them are articulate, some of them are nice.
Yeah. And sometimes when you break Al-Qaeda's back, you get fucking ISIS.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or you do this, and the second you handle one horrible situation, another one pops up that is
Completely different,
just as bad.
Because while you're going after the skinheads that are assaulting people in the streets and you're marching on them with force, the silent ones are sneaking in the back doors with ammonium nitrate and filling, big 55-gallon drums, and you have no idea.
Right.
And while you're trying to infiltrate the KKK and stop the cross burnings, you've got people marching in other areas of the country in full plain view saying, look over here, look over here, look over here.
Yeah.
While this stuff's going on, you can't get them both at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, last thing I've got under likes. So again, we touched on this a little bit, but back to the genres. We talked about how mystery was something that was like a bit strange, but actually kind of made sense. This movie does a great job at showing how difficult undercover investigations can be because you don't always know who's behind it. You might have a target, like his target was Dallas Wolf, but there's no hard evidence for that. And it turned out that was the wrong target.
Yep.
And only by happenstance did he find the right target. And like, I have obviously never been undercover that you guys know about, but I can only imagine being in a situation where you know something bad's going to happen. You don't know who's going to do it. And your job is to figure it the fuck out. And you've got like 5 or 6 different competing options, right? And that's where he's at, right? He's got these fucking skinheads. He's got the Aryan Brotherhood thing. He's got the KKK guys. He's got the family guys. He's got the
talk show host guy.
The talk show host guy. Like, he's got like 5 or 6 different options, and each seems just as likely and unlikely as the next.
Yep.
Right? The skinheads certainly have the hatred and the willingness to do it. They don't have the fucking intelligence or ability. What the family guy's going to do it, he's got a wife and kids. Why would he risk wife and kids and a good life and a big house to do stupid shit like that. Oh, the Aryan Brotherhood's going to do it. Like, they've been talking about doing this shit for fucking
decades.
30 years. And
Yeah.
it seems likely that they just like flapping their gums and seeming like big boys. And each one seemed like possible, but unlikely.
Yeah.
Too. You know.
Yeah.
Because he starts losing traction with Dallas and then building momentum with Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, he's building a relationship with Jerry and pissing off the skinheads and, you know, getting in with the KKK. And you're just like, where is it going to come from?
Right.
The whole time I'm sitting there like, which one of these guys is going to go off?
I'm so sorry, but you sitting there wondering which of these guys is going to go off is definitely a situation that you've been in before.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie about it.
That was a reference to an orgy, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a band from the 90s and early
Yes.
2000s.
Yeah. Kind of bird.
It's a kind of bird. That's exactly right.
Big ol' wings.
Big ol' wings. The Orgy Bird, which is also a band.
A bugger.
The Orgy Bird.
The orgy bird.
The Orgy Bird.
Like that? Like that? A little thing.
Was there anything that we didn't like about this movie? And I'm going to like lead us off by saying like, nobody likes the language. Nobody likes the content. That's the point. To say you don't like that is, we all know we don't like that.
Pedantic.
It's unnecessary. And
So if I strip out all of the content and I'm just left with structure, I enjoyed this movie. And I don't really have any critiques outside of not liking
he's going to say it.
the subject.
He's going to say it.
What?
Yep.
What?
Well, I agree with you. I agree. Because there are a lot of things that I don't like about this movie. But the things that I don't like about this movie are the things that make me uncomfortable, which are the things that
Make it
this
a good movie.
was made about.
Right.
Like, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. So, yeah, I didn't like the racial slurs. Yeah, I didn't like the fact that, you know, there were Nazis everywhere. That's the movie. But
I believe there are like a couple of people from The Greatest Generation that have also said that. I didn't like the fact that there were Nazis everywhere. Otherwise, Europe was lovely.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful countryside. Sweeping vistas.
Sweet.
But yeah, conceptually, structurally, I find no fault with this movie. It was well made. The acting was great.
That was not a lower move.
Easy boy.
Simmer down. The acting was great. I mean, Daniel Radcliffe did an amazing job.
Oh God, he was so good.
He was so good. Yeah.
And honestly, all of the bit parts, like everybody who played a minor character, like everybody who had one fucking line in this movie delivered.
Yeah.
Like they were so good.
Like he's marching in a rally. Basically, he's marching with a bunch of white supremacists shouting things like, I hate that this is going to come out of my mouth, but white pride and white power. Ugh. Sorry, that left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. They also were curiously saying white flour. So they
I
were
use
like,
that when I'm making bread.
yeah, they were
Is that
both,
wrong?
They
Or
were
you're
both
pretty-
hateful, but they were also really into baking.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do like their chemistry. And one of, like, somebody that knew him.
It was the guy from the wine store in the beginning of the movie.
Oh, that's who it was.
So again, almost seems like a friend, but it's like you're like led to believe this guy's an introvert and he doesn't have any friends or many. And it was like the second or third time I watched this movie, I was like, is the guy who shouts at him at the thing? And then I started paying attention to the beginning. It is the same guy.
Okay, so a person of color operates this liquor store, wine store. It definitely was a wine store.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he casually converses with Nate, but he sees him marching with these skinheads and racists and shouting horrible things. And he's like calling him by name. And Daniel Radcliffe, just without missing a beat, tells him to fuck off and then explains
With a
away.
slightly more colorful choice of words.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it.
No, I'm not asking. Not asking you to.
Never going to say it.
Not asking you
Yeah,
to.
very quickly just writes it off. Some asshole who lives in my building. That's
Because his
that.
cover could have been blown like
Immediately.
if they thought that he had any type of established relationship with this guy.
Yeah.
And the guy was there to counter protest.
Yeah.
So I agree with your points that there's nothing I can point to and say like
I'm not going to shit all over this
I don't
movie.
think there was anything that was done incorrectly with this movie. I'd say it's a really, really good movie.
And it framed the despicable content as despicable content. There was
they're the bad
no
guys.
glorification.
Are we ready to move on to quotes?
Yeah. This week, what is that number that is less than 24 more than 2?
Oh, are you talking about 7?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have 7. I'm going to read all 3 of my 7.
The joke never gets old.
It doesn't. I'm really enjoying this joke, and I hope it never dies.
It never will. All quotes go to heaven.
I saw that Disney movie in the 90s.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember the context of this. I think this was when Daniel Radcliffe's character was sitting down with Jerry, I believe, and then they were just talking about how small actions of a single person can have a profound impact on the larger society. And like we've talked about a couple times already, they're talking from different contexts, but Radcliffe's character makes the comment, a man's body dies, but his deeds live forever. And this is the call to action. It can mean many things. It is like fire in that it is both constructive and destructive. So
they're Goodendoogle and they're Badendoogle.
Yes.
yeah. Yes. I got another one here. It's the random noises that really get you.
It is. It really is. Because I like see the cogs turning for like a quarter second, and he's like, "I got nothing. You're looking at my mouth."
And that, yes.
Rip the cord, funny noise.
Go for the laugh. Yeah, that's what's happening. Sure. Let's spoil the mystery.
We have fun.
I forget the context of this one as well, but this was towards the end of the movie. And again, I think this was also Radcliffe. How can you reason with someone like that? How can you hope to change their mind? And again, that strikes at the meat and potatoes of this movie, that in order to affect change with an individual, you have to be a person with them. You have to break bread with them in some respects.
And Toni Collette kept pushing him, like basically reminding him, like, you're not so different from these people. And he, like all of us, that's like the last thing we want to admit.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to admit that you're not so different from this absolutely just horrible person who does horrible things, right? But everyone in the world is close to horrible people who do horrible things, is one step away. If they only took this path instead of that path, they would have ended up somewhere very different.
Yeah. It's the same reason why we learn history. We need to understand the humanity of the terrible things that we as a species have done in the past so that we can understand and navigate our future in a responsible way.
That's right, because those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it.
I've never heard that.
And those who do study history are forced to sit idly by while everybody else repeats it.
Yes, that is usually how it goes. And history is written by the victors.
Yes.
Which are usually the people who don't fucking study history.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of cyclical chapters.
There's a lot of... You get to chapter 15, it's like, go back to chapter 3. You get to chapter 12, go back to chapter 1.
It's the class, like the meme of Marty McFly saying, "Oh, I've seen this one." And the kids go, "What do you mean? This is brand new."
This is a brand new, exciting, shiny type of fascism. This is fascism with computers.
And you're like, no, I've definitely seen this before.
Yeah. And my last one here, this was given by, oh gosh, what was her name again? Toni Collette's character. When it comes down to it, there's only one main ingredient to fascism: victimhood. And that's it in a nutshell, really.
That is the thesis of this movie, right?
What is it, like hurt people, like
pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's a great line that absolutely describes what's going on. I mean, it's not always used in this context, but you're right, that fully applies.
Like, you don't tend to hurt other people if you don't feel wronged or if you don't feel like the victim. And maybe it's for something that is grounded in reality, and maybe it's not. Maybe these are ideas you were given by a talk show host, maybe something you read online. I don't know.
There's a reason that talk show host sells, right? Because what he's doing is preying on and stoking fears of being a victim. Nobody wants to be taken advantage of. And, you can see that in the policy world. A lot of the most pernicious and dangerous policies in the world are built on the idea of protecting you from something that usually doesn't even exist or is such a...
From the ambiguous other.
Yeah, exactly. There is some danger that's coming, and we need to create a policy to protect us against it. And that policy might be interring Japanese Americans in concentration camps during World War II. We had to protect ourselves I'm doing air quotes you can't see because this is a podcast where you listen with your ear holes and I talk with my mouth hole. But you create these policies in order to protect you from the other, usually because somebody has stoked that fear in you.
Yeah.
And you might have that fear from a very real, very personal experience, or you might have that fear from a like anxious what if. But ultimately, you're scared of something and somebody manipulates you into supporting things that are dangerous and horrible and hurt people.
Yeah, and the really pernicious ones, the really insidious ones are good at manufacturing that fear where it doesn't otherwise exist.
Right.
You know, they are able to paint a scenario that creates that fear and then build it and manipulate it and weaponize it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to listen to Alex Jones, but like the second I heard gay frogs, I was like, I got to listen to this guy because he's talking about the real issues.
It's concerning.
It's terrifying.
Yep.
You know, what if the frogs are gay? What is going to fucking happen? I don't know. I need him to tell me.
The chemicals in the water are turning the fucking frogs gay.
Oh my God. And now there are chemicals in the water.
Yeah.
Like, I heard that they put oxygen and hydrogen into the water.
Yeah.
Into the fucking water.
Everybody knows that hydrogen is the gay element.
It's true.
You know, because, it's in the name, right? Hydrogen.
Exactly. You know, read between the lines, guys. Hydro, water, fluid, gender fluid, trans, queer, gay, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but we actually all unwittingly consume dihydrogen monoxide every single day.
You know what I heard? I heard dihydrogen monoxide is responsible and involved in every single drowning death ever.
Yeah.
I tend to sip it.
It rusts metal. Like, it eats metal.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Dihydrogen monoxide is water for those that are not science-minded.
I'm going to cut that out because fuck you if you don't know that.
Get out of here.
Okay.
Got some more quotes?
So, Jorkson,
Yo.
do you have 7, 14, 21,
I
or
have
28
seven.
quotes?
I have 7.
7?
Yeah.
Good. Damn.
So, like Mark, I'm going to read all 3 of my 7. I can't take credit for that. I am just copying Mark because I thought it was funny.
Mark, God, he does so much funny shit that you can't see.
It's
and
great.
It's like he does this thing, but he forgets we're not being recorded on video.
I didn't forget.
There's no video feed here.
Now the faces are half the battle.
I didn't forget.
So
knowledge is the other half.
Yeah.
Faces and knowledge are
Yes.
each half the battle.
So my first quote comes from like the security expert in the skinhead gang. You know, they've inducted Nate into the group and he's one of us. They're all drinking, having a good time. There's music playing and they're in some seedy underground warehouse that I've probably been in. And he stops Nate and he goes, "You know what, Nate? Everybody seems to really fucking like you." And Nate just goes, "Yeah," and walks away.
That's beautiful.
Because, like, this guy clearly does not like him, does not trust him.
No.
And he's, like, getting in his face. And Daniel Radcliffe, like, you can't see because it's so dark.
Waiting for the punchline.
Yeah, it's, like, so dark, you can't really see their faces. But in his profile, you can see that Daniel Radcliffe is, like, smirking slightly. It's like, yeah.
And then just turns and walks away. My next quote comes from Toni Collette's character. After the case derails and Dallas Wolf is revealed to be a red herring and he finds some actual real traction with Jerry, you know, he apologizes for some inflammatory remarks. And Toni Collette says, "Well, that's what this job does to you. Keep at it another 10 years and you'll be a real asshole."
Mm-hmm.
And my final quote comes from one of the KKK guys as they're planning to make dirty bombs using TATP as the incendiary catalyst. And he's going to test it. And Daniel Radcliffe, like, freaks out. He's like, "What do you mean you're going to test it? You're going to light it on fire here? Like, dude, do you have any idea what this stuff is? Like, no, this is a bad idea." And he's like, "Well, that's why I'll do the test carefully. You want to see the YouTube? Because I have it on my phone."
Not a good idea.
And all 3 of us were like, "No, that's a bad idea."
That's not where you get your bomb advice from.
No.
Dummy.
Don't pull that on YouTube.
YouTube could help you fix a car regulator, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, bomb making, that's clearly like an Instagram thing.
Yeah,
you know?
TikTok.
You go TikTok? Okay.
Well, TikTok for bomb making.
Yeah.
A tick for a talk.
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah, you gotta find the bootlegged copy of the Anarchist Cookbook and go from there.
Yes, you do.
I don't think you have to do that.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the Anarchist Cookbook, like, it's gone, right?
No.
Because I read, take this with a grain of salt, I read an article talking about the Anarchist Cookbook and how the original copy was destroyed and there are no copies left, and the only copies out there are like the heavily revised and edited versions.
Yes and no. So there are 2 versions, and the second version is revised. It has taken out a lot of the original shit and has revised recipes for some things, because the original version's recipes would fucking kill you. Not like kill people, like kill like the maker.
Yeah.
There are still copies of both out there. There are people and probably governmental organizations that are trying to collect and remove the copies from circulation. It is not in print anymore. It is, unfortunately, many people have gotten a hold of it, scanned it, and then it is available online, which is fucking terrifying.
That is.
I mean, is it like, yes and no? Like, the Anarchist Cookbook is like, it's a book from a different time. It doesn't have a place anymore. We now have the internet, and anything that you can think of, imagine, you can find.
And anything that would be in that book is readily available online.
Yes, but also, like, there's this, like, the creator of the book is absolutely just beside himself, like, with guilt for having written it. And that started in almost immediately. Like, a year after he wrote this, he was like, oh my God, like, people are losing their hands. People are, like, melting their fucking faces off. And it's not because people are, like, trying to build pipe bombs to, like, wage a war. It's because people are like, yeah, it'll be fun to build a pipe bomb in the field behind my house and just, like, let it off. But, like, the recipes aren't good. They're half-baked at best. And people are fucking, like, losing their lives because they're trying to, like, create some of this shit that's in the thing. And so, unfortunately, because there's that lore about it, because there's that, you know, that mysticism, people do want to find it. They do want to get their hands on a copy. And unfortunately, a certain subsection of the people who do that will try out some of these things.
They want to play with it.
Yeah. And, like, I am a huge proponent of, like, do not ban books. And I do think that, like, you know, banning this book outright will cause an interest in it that probably, you know, wouldn't be there otherwise.
Yeah.
But it is one of the few examples of books where you can make an argument where I'm going to go, yeah, you're kind of right there. Like, it is super fucking dangerous.
Feel like the general public shouldn't have access to
but
this.
Again, it's kind of a fuzzy area, because it's like banning books at any point is a dangerous prospect. And like Mark said, most of the shit can be gathered already from other sources. So I'm not coming down on a side. I'm just saying, like, of all of the books in the world, I think that is one where I'm the most on the fence about whether or not a ban would be reasonable or legitimate. Anyway.
Still have some quotes to do.
We still have some quotes. Okay, so I have 7 quotes, believe it or not.
Okay, yeah.
Somehow we all had the same number of quotes.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's strange. So I'm going to read right now the first of my 7 quotes.
Yeah.
And it's in the beginning of the movie. It's right after the scene where they're, like, describing, like, the cesium went missing and all this stuff, which came right after the scene where those, like, kind of jockey field agents, like, were fucking with him. And Daniel Radcliffe is sitting at his desk, his cubicle, with his headphones on, and Toni Collette goes up and, like, touches his shoulder. He immediately assumes that it's the fucking jockey asshole field agents, turns around and goes, okay, will you fucking stop? Oh my God, I am so sorry. He's like reacting and turning around. And as he's like turning around saying, would you fucking stop? He sees Toni Collette, realizes it's not the guys. He goes, I am so sorry.
And just to be clear, Toni Collette, like, is the head of the domestic terrorism, like, division for this particular group of agents. So kind of a important person not to piss off.
She's certainly a more senior level person than him. He recognized this mistake immediately. Yeah. And then actually in almost the very next scene, when she's trying to basically justify to Daniel Radcliffe why they would be looking at domestic terrorists and why they would be pursuing this angle, she says, what is a sort of prophetic quote, just because you're not looking at something doesn't mean it's not there. Which is so fucking true, and doubly so on Sundays and when you're talking about the FBI.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if the FBI isn't considering all angles, there's probably a problem. Because, like, you can't be so focused on one thing that you lose sight of the other threats that exist, right?
You can't make out the trees for the forest.
And not counting the fact that, like, there could very legitimately be 2 threats going on at once.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, that is a very real possibility. And then again, very shortly after he's agreed and he's getting his character together and she's quizzing him and doing all this stuff. And he hands her a piece of paper and she goes, "What's this?" And he goes, "Oh, it's my DD-214. If anybody's curious of whether or not I was in the military, I was up all night photoshopping it." And she starts ripping it up. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing?" And she goes, "If you ever find yourself in a situation where somebody is asking to see your DD-214, you're already done."
And
Like-
that one hit me. I was like, oof, yeah, no, if his cover is that delicate,
Right?
oh, it's never gonna hold.
and it comes up a few times.
It does.
Where he's challenged and he just has to like respond like forcefully and emotionally, and that's what gets him through.
Yeah. I mean, like at one point, one of the characters, who's Taserface?
Oh, Chad Sullivan.
Yeah,
Sutherland.
What's his character's name?
Andrew.
At one point, he is, kind of leaning heavily on Daniel Radcliffe's character and goes, "Yeah, but cover only runs so deep. Like, make a few phone calls and eventually somebody's never going to have heard of this fake person and you'll be able to piece shit together." That's fucking scary.
Oh, that
is
whole scene had...
fucking scary.
Oh, I was clenching so hard.
You almost snapped my dick off.
Yeah.
Gross.
No, it was because it was in his butt.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Misunderstood.
But we've clarified where, we understand now.
We all came away from it.
I didn't. Okay, are we ready to rate this bitch?
I think we are.
Okay. I had a few different metrics and I landed on a pretty benign one. I'm going 7.6 boots. Because everybody was wearing boots.
Yeah, everybody was wearing combat
I wonder why everybody was wearing boots.
I don't know why. Some people had armbands. I don't know. I chose not that metric, but boots it is.
You're right. There are a lot of things that we can and won't choose from this movie that were symbolic and present.
Yeah, but these boots were made for walking. And so that's just what they'll do.
And marching.
I am going to give this movie an 8.1 cupcakes.
God damn it.
Any kind of cupcakes you want. Any kind. Any kind. They can have any kind of frosting. Unicorn frosting. They can have rainbow frosting. They can have other types of frosting.
They could have black swastikas on them.
Any kind of frosting.
That's true.
I'm not telling you what kind they are so as to avoid the armband situation.
Well, I'm just saying, put it out there on the table so I know whose cupcakes not to eat.
Exactly. Did I steal your metric?
Big time. Been thinking about it for like 20 minutes. I didn't think of a backup. All right, I got one. I'm going to give this 7.6 Geiger counters.
Ooh,
See,
that's
I was
subtle.
going to go like Curies. But yeah. Same. Wait, 2 7.6s?
Oh, yeah.
Was it 2 7.6s?
Holy shit.
Hey. I couldn't remember what number you gave.
Okay. I think that's all we got, right? We had no other metrics or anything to report.
No.
Nothing at all.
Except for
Ever.
maybe a scene score.
Scene score. Okay, the scene score for this movie. Let's see. Colin gave it an 8 point.
That was the chair.
Sure.
It's been the chair all night.
Sure.
That was the chance. It was the nod that really made me not believe.
Colin gave it an 8.1. Mark gave it a 7.6. Jackson gave it a 7.6. For an average score from us, a 7.8.
All right.
We had 11 respondents to our movie familiarity survey.
Could be higher, but I like that number.
Yeah, it could be higher.
Could be lower.
Could be lower.
And I'm
there
glad
are
it's not.
there are numbers lower than 11. That's
There
true.
are.
Thank you to everybody who responded to our movie familiarity survey. To those of you who didn't, you're dead to me. If you change your mind and want to be not dead to me, so if you want to be a zombie, basically,
Yeah.
you can join our mailing list at our website, tmaab.podbean.com, or you can email us and we'll put you on the mailing list and we will send that movie familiarity score weekly-ish to you, and you can weigh in on whether or not you've seen an upcoming movie. Average familiarity among those 11 respondents, who are also probably war heroes,
Yeah. That tracks.
was 0.5 out of 10. So 5% familiarity, which is, believe it or not, higher than I expected.
Yeah.
I have never encountered somebody who has seen this movie, which is shocking because it's got big names. It's got a really good budget, but this is a bit of a low situation where it's one person responded yeah, I think I heard of that. It's
But this movie is so not low.
but it's who the fuck has heard,
Yeah.
but
I guess to be fair, the only reason why I'd ever even heard the name was because I worked at a movie theater when it came out.
oh, did you've actually heard of this?
I mean, I've heard of it because I saw the poster.
Fascinating.
But
I did not realize that you had a very baseline familiarity.
very basic.
So 7.8 with that low familiarity score gives us quite a punch up. 8.9 is our scene score for this movie. 8.9. And that is right on the money for me. I think if anything in this podcast today makes you interested in seeing this movie, I would fucking put it high on my priority list to go and see.
It is a very well-made movie.
Yeah. If you listened to this entire episode post spoilers without having watched it and you found any of this resonates or drives you to watch this movie, I think you should. Like, bear in mind what the subject matter is, because it is heavy and it is uncomfortable at a lot of points.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't make you uncomfortable,
It should.
that is something you should question.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yawn and yell and is that a place? You were making a good point. I'm sorry.
How dare you?
It should make you uncomfortable, right?
It should.
We're gonna fucking tell Keisha Shazerfeld.
Don't you talk to Keisha Shazerfeld. Don't you talk to Keisha Shazerfeld. Shoverland.
Shoverland?
Yeah. Keter Shoverland.
Keter Shoverland. Keter Shoverland.
Yeah.
That man runs a fucking gas station in the deep south.
Yep.
Keter Shoverland. Okay, are we Lurdern?
I think we are Lurdern.
All right, well, that is all for the El Crep review. Thank you for listening. If you have any ideas for movie reviews, you can get involved and contribute by going to our website, tmaab.podbean.com. TMAAB stands for 3 Man and
Basement.
You can also email us at 3, that is the number 3, menandabasement@gmail.com. At our website, you can fill out our movie familiarity survey. You can fill out our movie suggestion form. We got all sorts of fucking fun biddies for you.
Buy yourself some merch.
Get some fucking merch.
Do it.
And all proceeds for that go to,
Stuff.
Things.
Stuff. We're going to buy Jackson some new shirts. And I don't know why I said that. You look dapper tonight. I apologize.
I look better today than I do most days.
I could use some new socks, maybe.
I just
No,
got some.
you get nothing.
I want a
We'll
sock.
enjoy it. You get nothing and we'll
Tell
enjoy
you what,
it.
I'll get a pair of socks. I'll let you borrow one.
I could get down with that.
All right.
Yeah. I could. I'm not going to wear it on my foot.
What? Why not? Whatever.
Where were we? Yeah.
We're talking about the upcoming show.
Yeah, you get to see an upcoming. You get to hear about an upcoming movie if you fill out our familiarity survey. And please be sure to check out Artificial Labia Harness, which is something I just said with my mouth words.
It's a raucous good time.
It is
Unexpected.
surely unexpected. Yep. And it's artificial, so it's going to be sterile-ish. Sterile-ish.
Just hang out and listen to them.
Can we agree that Artificial Labia Harness absolutely created the score for fucking Tokyo Gore Police? Like, you know that, right? Like, you know that for a fact, like a goddamn fact. Also, on stage 2, we've got a performance artist named Dirty Kevin, and he builds a dirty bomb and then deploys it. And everybody, himself and everybody in the first 3 or 4 rows gets the Goopadoop. And it's bad. It's bad.
You want to wash up.
You're going to wash up. Don't see him at a festival. There's no showers available. You will be Goopadooped for days. And it will stain and it will make you, it's basically the bog of eternal stench.
Yeah.
On stage 3, following those 2 bands, we've got The Orgy Bird.
Now that is a show you don't want to miss.
That's a raucous good time.
Yeah.
Everybody gets beaked.
Oh, God, dude.
These shows are now on tour now. You can also find us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, fucking...
iHeartRadio.
Sure, why not?
No, we're on there. We're on there.
Sure, I believe you. I heard some radio.
You could play it on a Chromecast. You could play it on a Fire Stick. You could. You honestly, you could record it on some kind of Walkman, and then you could play it on a cassette as you're walking home from school from 8th grade, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah,
in the past,
I've done that.
You just rewind it,
put it in your Jinko G's.
Jinko. Okay, that's a.
And
sorry.
Until then,
I'm Colin McLeod.
Mark Halp.
Action Jackson.
And we'll see you in cyberspace.
Reznor.